Welcome to All Ages Driving School. I'm Mr. James, and today we're going to be reviewing our final exam. We're going to make sure that you know all the answers to get the best score you can get. So let's get started. So final exam, what does it look like? The final exam is a 120 question exam. It has multiple choice answers such as A, B, C, or D. It has questions that have true or false. It has fill in the blank. It has short answer essay, which you either may define or describe or articulate a particular procedure or maneuver, and the test takes about 2 hours to complete. Alright, so let's get started. Now, just so you know, I'm going to be sourcing a lot of my answers. I'm also going to be highlighting certain aspects of these slides, so that way you'll have a quick reference of what you need to know on the exam, because you may see it on your exam, especially if it's highlighted. So let's get started. The Highway Transportation System, also known as HTS. The purpose of the HTS is to move people, vehicles, goods in a safe and efficient manner. President Eisenhower conceived the interstate system. It was authorized for designation by Federal Aid Highway Act of 1944, with the initial designations in 1947 and completed in 1955 under the 40,000-mile limitation imposed by the 1944 Act. And if you need further explanation, you can find it in our textbook, the Traffic Safety Education Student Textbook in Chapter 1, and those are the pages. All right, so regulation of the highway transportation system. What regulates it? Regulation of the HTS is done by a group of laws known as traffic laws. Notice how I underlined that? So if you see that in a fill-a-blank question, know it's traffic laws. How to get out of a skid. Okay, the first thing you want to do is take your foot off the gas. Second thing is slightly steer into the direction you want to go. Here's a diagram if you need to further look at it. And at any time during this presentation, feel free to pause the video so that way you can get more detail or even look at the source to make sure you have a better understanding. Your attitude will determine how safe of a driver you'll become. So we want you to use defensive driving strategies to stay safe for yourself and others. Use positive strategies to control anger and anxiety while driving. Respect the laws that regulate the HTS, such as don't speed, don't run red lights, stop signs, things of that nature. We want you to avoid using alcohol and drugs, especially when driving. Keep distractions to a minimum. Don't text and drive. Keep your hands free of electronic devices and focus on the task of driving. SIPDE. Now, SIPDE, you're going to see about 10 questions that are going to be directly related to SIPDE. So if you know every single one, then you'll be able to get this question right. So S stands for either scan or search. You're looking for road hazards. Okay, once you look for those road hazards, you're going to identify those hazards, which is the I. P stands for predict. You need to determine how those hazards are going to react, or what you need to do to react. Then you need to decide what you're going to do to respond to those hazards. And then once you've decided, you execute that maneuver. Whatever it is that you're going to do to avoid conflict with that hazard. Cruise control. Cruise control is usually found on your steering wheel or near your steering wheel on your dash. It allows you to maintain speed while taking your foot off the accelerator. The accelerator is also known as gas when you press it. Braking chart. Oops, let's get out of there. Braking chart. You need to know it. This is what the braking chart looks like. It is in your DPS handbook. All right. Get to know that braking chart. Get to know what these numbers mean, how they reflect in terms of how fast you go and how much distance you need to stop. For each speed, there is a bar. Inside the bar, 2 numbers. The first number, right here, the first number, refers to reaction time. The distance you travel when you first see the hazard to the moment you apply the brakes. The second number is your braking distance, how far you travel the moment you apply the brakes until you come to a complete stop. The final number is your total stopping distance. All right, this is the distance when you combine these two to get how many feet you're going to need in order to stop going at that speed. So if you're going 70 miles per hour, your reaction distance would be, or reaction time, the distance you'll travel is 154 feet. When you finally apply the brake, you'll travel another 233 feet. So your approximate stopping distance going 70 miles per hour will be 387 feet. Choking the engine. All right, so choking the engine refers to controlling the amount of air an engine receives. In an internal combustion engine, a choke valve modifies the air pressure in the intake manifold, thereby altering the ratio of fuel and air quality entering the engine. Choke valves are generally used in naturally aspirated engines with carburetors to supply a richer fuel mixture when starting the engine. Now, today's cars really don't have a choking valve near their steering wheel. However, if you drive a car prior to 1960, most cars did have a choking valve. If you notice, if you ever mowed a lawn, lawnmowers have choking valves. Before you start it, you pull up on the choke valve to reduce air. You start it, you have a low RPM, you push it back in, more air gets into the engine, the RPMs increase and allow you to mow the lawn. So many people who've mowed lawns before, you know what a choking valve is and know what choking the engine means. However, for those who don't, and if you see this on your test, this would be the answer. It controls the amount of air the engine receives. All right, so turning left from a 3-lane one-way street, okay? Anytime you're on a one-way street, that means all lanes are going in the same direction, and you want to make a left turn, you always want to get into the far left lane to make that left turn. Pennant-shaped signs, okay? This is what a pennant shape looks like. You'll find it in your DPS handbook. Here's another picture of a DPS, a no passing zone sign, which is also a pennant-shaped sign. So passing is illegal within 100 feet of an intersection inside a city. 100 feet of a railroad track, 100 feet of a curve, 100 feet of a hill, 100 feet of a tunnel. Sight becomes shorter when being passed, it is illegal to speed up. So in a situation where someone is trying to pass you, it is illegal to speed up your vehicle. You want to make sure that they can get in front of you as soon as possible, so that way everybody is safe. But in a no pass zone, you're not allowed to pass anybody on your left-hand side. And of course, anytime you're being passed on the right, that means you're going in the left-hand lane. That means you're going too slow and you move over to your right-hand lane. Slower traffic, keep right. Flashing yellow light. When you approach a flashing yellow light, you must slow down. Do not confuse it with a solid yellow light, which means caution. Usually our flashing yellow lights, they're found inside school zones, near fire stations. Anytime you're approaching a dangerous curve, you'll see flashing yellow lights to remind you to slow your speed. Traffic officer. When a traffic officer is at an intersection with a traffic control light, the officer is in control. The officer controls the flow of traffic. If you see an officer with the palm facing you, it means stop. This is what an officer looks like right here with the palm facing you. And this is the source if you need a better explanation. Markings of the lanes of traffic. White. White means one way, same direction. Yellow means two-way, opposing directions. Dashed lines means passing is permitted or allowed. Solid lines means passing is prohibited, not allowed. Double solid means both sides are prohibited from crossing over, thus no passing. These are what they look like. This is what it means. If you need to pause the video, make a good indication of what this is. But just be aware that white means one way, yellow means two-way, dash means passing, solid means no passing. All right, non-driving related offense of possession or consumption of alcohol by a minor. All right, so the Texas Zero Tolerance Law establishes penalties for minors who commit offenses under the non-driving alcohol-related offenses. A minor may not purchase, attempt to purchase, falsely state he or she is 21 years of age or older, or present any document indicating he or she is 21 years of age or older to a person engaged in selling or serving alcoholic beverages. A minor may not consume or possess an alcoholic beverage. Persons who purchase, furnish, or sell alcohol to a minor can be fined up to $4,000 or confined in jail up to 1 year. MIP stands for minor in possession. So if you see a question that asks you what is the maximum first offense, it would be $500. And in fact, you may see 2 questions on your final exam that ask you that very question. MIP stands for minor in possession. What is the maximum fine for the first offense? Answer is $500. So make sure you have that in your notes. Leaving yourself an out. Okay, this comes from the 5 rules of the Smith system. And of course, the 5 rules are: you want to aim high, look at the big picture, keep your eyes moving, leave yourself an out, make sure they see you. So when we talk about leaving yourself an out, notice this car right here. It has space in front, on both sides of them, and behind them. Okay, that out is necessary in order for them to avoid a possible collision with another vehicle. All right, it allows them to maintain safety while driving. Like, you don't want to have a large number of cars grouped up together, which is usually what we call a wolf pack, and you be blocked from having that out. Okay, so the fourth principle of the Smith system states to leave yourself a way out. This means ensure that other drivers do not box you in while selecting their lanes. Do not tailgate other vehicles too closely, and always anticipate other drivers' moves. Out is an open area you should keep around your car to avoid collision. Suspended license. Operating a motor vehicle is a privilege. If this privilege is abused, it may result in a driver's license being suspended or revoked. So on our test, when we talk about suspended license, usually we go with the point system, and usually a person who participates in habitual reckless driving will lead to getting your license suspended. Now, of course, there are a whole laundry list of things that your license could be suspended for, but for your purpose of your final exam, habitual reckless driving will lead to a suspended license. Maximum and minimum stopping distances at railroad tracks. Maximum is 50 feet and minimum is 15 feet when stopping at a railroad track. And in here, of course, I have a picture straight out of the DPS handbook. It states right here, at railroad crossings, stop within 15 feet to 50 feet of the nearest rail. Okay, so when you see that on an exam, fill in the blank, 50 feet, 15 feet. All right, restrictions on driver's license, most common for teens. All right, the most common for teens, of course, if you wear glasses, and of course this is also true for adults, you must wear corrective lenses. So if you see this on your test, you would have to mark A, which is the code, and then of course what the code means, must wear corrective lenses. Also, teens usually have, when they have their learner's license, they'll have a B restriction. A B restriction simply states that a licensed operator must be in the front seat with you, and they must be 21 years of age or older when you are driving the vehicle with a learner's license. Another common one for teens, of course, is F. F means that you must hold that learner's license for 6 months. The date is given on the back of your learner's license, letting you know when that 6 months is up, and you'll be eligible to take your road test and get your provisional license. And of course, at 18 years old, you'll be eligible for your standard license. So how to signal a turn. All right, so you'll see some questions on the final exam that talk about turning signals and the proper use of a turning signal. You also may see questions that talk about proper use of hand signals. Okay, so how to signal. You may either use turn signal lights or hand and arm signals. If using hand signals, extend your hand and arm well out the car window as shown below. Now notice that they're using their left arm. If you use your right arm is inside the vehicle, not the outside of the vehicle. Now, of course, if you're driving in England where the steering wheel is on the right-hand side of the car and not on the left here in the United States, then it would be opposite. But since here we're in the United States in the state of Texas, you need to make sure you're using your left arm when making that signal. So making a left turn signal, you're going to have your arm straight out. And of course, here you have your signal light. If you are going to make a right turn, you're going to have your arm straight up. Okay, your left arm straight up. And here you have your right signal light. And if you're going to be slowing down or stopping, you'll notice that both signal lights are on, and you will be having your arm pointed downwards, letting the people behind you know that you are either slowing down or attempting to stop. All right, uncontrolled intersections. So an uncontrolled intersection is a road intersection where no traffic lights, road markings, or signs are used to indicate the right-of-way. They are found in either residential neighborhoods or in rural areas. While the intersection itself is unmarked, warning signs or lights may be present to alert drivers to it. So here's a little test tip right here. Driver on the left must yield to the driver on the right if arrived at the same time. Okay, remember rules of right-of-way. Choosing the proper driving speed. Okay, there's a lot of different variations that you have to consider when choosing the proper speed to drive when out there on the road. So let's go over those real quick. Deciding how fast depends on a number of factors. 1, condition of the weather. You want to slow down in rain, snow, sleet, or fog. 2, you want traffic conditions. If in heavy traffic, slow down, create distance between you and the driver in front of you. Don't tailgate, which is following too closely. Road conditions. Is the road wet, icy, potholes, bumps, dips? In those type of situations, you definitely want to slow down. Condition of the car. Do you have bald tires? That means the tread on your tires are wearing thin. Your brake pads are worn, meaning that your brakes don't respond as effectively as a car with good brake pads. If you have a cracked windshield, your visibility may be, obscured because of the crack in the windshield. So you definitely want to slow down and fix your car as soon as possible. Condition of the driver. Is the driver sleepy, intoxicated, under the influence of drugs, sick, heart condition, poor vision, anger management issues? You definitely want to slow down and stay safe. And definitely avoid driving if you have any of those type of conditions. Speed limit. This is the speed in which most drivers are going. However, conditions must be ideal. That means no adverse condition. And an adverse condition is a condition that affects traction and vision. Speed minimum. Under ideal conditions, this is the slowest you can go on a state or federal highway or interstate. For example, on Interstate 45, the slowest speed you can go under ideal conditions when traffic is light is 45 miles per hour. So speed minimum. And of course, highlight means these things may be on your test. Signal lights. Green means go. However, there is a term called stale green light, which means that it's a light that has been green for a while, or you did not observe the light go from red to green. So you must assume it is about to change yellow soon. So you must anticipate it. Green on the left, solid green on a left turn, you must yield to opposing traffic. Solid yellow light means caution. A flashing yellow light means always slow down. Always slow down. Red light must stop at or behind the stop line. Flashing red must stop and treat it like a stop sign and properly yield. Green arrow simply means you have a protected left turn. However, you still must yield to pedestrians. Flashing yellow arrow, same thing as a solid green on a left turn. You must yield to opposing traffic prior to turning. Now, one of the questions you may see on your final exam is, can a colorblind tell which color is red? Now, because the traffic laws are somewhat universal here in the United States, a person who is colorblind can still tell which light would be the red light simply by the position of the light. So here a colorblind can tell which color is red because red is on the right and green is on the left. Also, generally the green and red colors have a bit of orange and blue in them, so where most colorblind people can still tell the difference. 13 rules of right-of-way. All right, you must know the proper rules of right-of-way and how to yield when in those situations. So number 1, at controlled intersection, yield signs and signals. 2, roads with fewer lanes yields to roads with more lanes. 3, unpaved road yields to paved roads. 4, at uncontrolled intersection, yield to cars on your right. When turning left, yield to oncoming traffic. 6, private roads, alleys, and driveway yields to cars on public roads. 7, at T intersection, yield to through traffic, special merging situations. 8, on a frontage road, yield to cars entering and exiting the controlled access highway. 9, on a multi-lane roadway, when 2 cars are entering the same lane, the car on the right must yield to the car on the left. 10, yield to trains and railroad crossings. 11, yield to emergency vehicles. Okay, now usually that means pulling over to the right and stopping. However, in most situations, what I want you to focus on is the word yield. So however you yield to them to allow them access to that space, that is what you do. 12, yield to school buses with flashing red lights. 13, yield to pedestrians. Always yield to pedestrians. That will be a question on your test. Right-of-way is defined. The legal right of a pedestrian, vehicle, or ship to proceed with precedence over others in a particular situation or place, or basically the right to occupy a space. Alcohol and drugs and effect on driving. Here's a little test tip for you. Pay attention to alcohol and stimulants. And if you see PI, PI stands for public intoxication. Okay, so stimulants. Stimulants such as heavy amphetamine use may keep drivers awake and active for long periods of time. It also makes them less coordinated, edgy, and is more likely to be involved in a car crash. All right, so amphetamines includes caffeine pills, drinking coffee, drinking caffeinated soda, all of these things that have caffeine in it or amphetamine that basically gives you energy, but at the same time it keeps you from focusing, and that's why you're more likely to be involved in a crash when using heavy amphetamines. So if you're trying to overcome sleepiness using amphetamines, which truck drivers or people who are on a tight schedule or who have to stay up later than usual for whatever reason, they may try to overcome it with coffee or something with caffeine or actual amphetamine pills such as caffeine pills to keep them awake. So you definitely don't want to be driving under that condition, so avoid it. Alcohol, it's a depressant drug affecting coordination, judgment, perception, and emotional state, and is responsible for a significant number of highway deaths. Okay. Blowout and flat tire. Now, some people think these are one and the same. However, because air is releasing from your tire, it does result in you needing to either replace your tire or fix it. But a blowout is different than a flat. So a blowout is a sudden complete loss of air pressure, destroying the tire. Usually your tire explodes when driving down the freeway. It could be done because your tires are overheating and you had very little tread, and it basically just blew open and now you have a blowout. Okay, a flat tire is usually you have a puncture into the tire where air is leaked out slowly or over time, to where it could actually be repaired with a patch. Okay, so traction, we define traction as having good grip on the road, so your tires are your only grip on the road. So you want to check your tire tread to avoid a possible blowout. Now, anytime you change a tire, you want to make sure that the area is level. So notice how that is highlighted. That may be a question on your final exam. Now, if you ever do find yourself in a blowout situation, here's what you do right here. You do not slam on your brakes. You take your foot off the accelerator and gently apply the brakes. You want to steer straight ahead to a stop. When you're able to do so safely, pull the vehicle off the road. Headlights. Okay, headlights are very important. What the law says in Texas is they must be turned on 30 minutes after sunset. Okay, the time between the sun sets and when it gets completely dark is twilight. So once twilight is over, which is usually 30 minutes after sunset, you must have your headlights on in the state of Texas. You may turn off your headlights 30 minutes before sunrise. Again, when twilight begins, when that sun starts coming up, but you don't see it in the sky, but the sky is illuminated, we call that twilight. You may go ahead and turn them off. However, I recommend that you go ahead and just keep your headlights on no matter when you drive. Okay. All right, they must be turned on when visibility is less than 1,000 feet, usually in situations such as fog, rain, snow, sleet, sometimes smoke, okay, from forest fires, things like that, where you can't see through. All right, low beam headlights are to be used in the following cases: fog, in the city where it's well lit; rain, within 500 feet of an approaching car at night or within 100 feet of a car in front of you to avoid glare; daytime running lights. It is recommended that lights be used during the day because it's a safety feature allowing other cars to see you better. Overdrive your headlights. Now this is something you may see on your final exam. When your stopping distance is greater than the lights that illuminate the road ahead, best way to avoid overdriving your headlights is to slow down and don't speed. Passive and active restraints. A passive feature is a system that does not do any work until it is called to action. These features become active during an accident and to work to minimize damages and reduce the risk of injury during the time of impact. These systems are airbags and the construction of the vehicle. An active restraint system needs an extra effort by the human to activate or to use them. For example, a seatbelt must be fastened by the passenger to protect them from any crash. Child safety seats, they are required in Texas up to the age of 8. However, on the test, because it's an old test and they still haven't updated it yet, the correct answer you're going to mark down is 2 years. Okay, so here, seatbelt, active restraint, airbag, passive restraint. You are going to see this on your final exam, know the difference between the two, so that way you get those two questions right. Overcoming gravity and inertia. Okay, gravity, the force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth or toward any other physical body having mass. So here's a test tip. When driving uphill, you are overcoming the force of gravity. Inertia, a property of matter by which it continues its existing state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line, unless that state is changed by an external force. Test tip. When you approach curves, your car has a tendency to want to go straight. The only way to overcome the force of inertia is to slow down. All right, covering the brake. When your foot rests on or above the brake, such as downhill driving, shift into a lower gear. If you enter a curve too fast, brake gently, okay, to overcome that inertia. All right, who should you call to schedule a drive time? All right, this is going to be a question on your final exam. All right, so it's important that you know which location you are attending, so that way you can call the correct location in order to schedule a drive time. So here's the drive time for Katy, Kirkwood, Sugar Land, Pasadena, this is where I work, and Cypress. Now, of course, here's a test tip. Write the correct phone number for your location. Motorcyclists. Motorcyclists are hard to see because of their small size. You will see that on a test. What protects a motorcyclist from head injury is a helmet. You'll also see that on a test. The smaller the vehicle, the less the distance it takes to stop. For example, a bicycle can stop more efficiently than a motorcycle. Motorcycles should ride staggered with the left motorcyclist ahead of the first. So if you see an actual question that asks that, the correct answer would be two motorcyclists should ride staggered with the left motorcyclist ahead of the first. Bicyclist. A bicycle is a vehicle. Any person riding a bicycle has the same rights and responsibilities that apply to operating a vehicle, unless these cannot, by their nature, apply to a person operating a bicycle. Any person who operates a bicycle is subject to the same penalties for violating a traffic law as the person operating a motor vehicle. All traffic convictions will be placed on the individual's driving record, regardless if the conviction was for an offense committed by a bicycle or in a motor vehicle. Bicyclists should ride on the right side of the roadway. That's a test tip for you if you see that on your test. Wrong way driver. If you encounter a wrong way driver, you must do the following. 1. Slow down. 2. Steer to the right. 3. Sound your horn. Smog. This is how we change lanes. When performing a lane change, we want to use the smog system. So S means signal. You want to turn on your blinking signal, or also known as your blinker, for the direction in which you're changing lanes. This lets everyone around you know what your intentions are. Once you have your signal on, you're then going to check your mirrors. The first mirror you're going to check is your rear view mirror. And then you're going to check the side mirrors, and especially the one in which you want to change lanes to. Okay, once you've checked your mirrors, you still have a blind spot. So that's where we come to over the shoulder. Check your blind spot by looking over the shoulder. This will allow you to see the area in which your mirrors cannot see. That's what a blind spot is. And then, of course, once everything is clear, we go. If everything is clear and it is safe to change lanes, you simply execute the maneuver. Go. Trust your eyes. Execute the maneuver to avoid hazards in front of you. You don't want to continue. You want to go ahead and be confident in your driving skills. If your eyes and your senses are telling you everything is safe, everything is clear because you followed the proper procedure, you checked your mirrors, you looked in your blind spot, everything that you can gather data on says that it's safe, trust yourself and execute the maneuver, because the more you delay, the longer you delay because you're not believing your own eyes, there could be possible hazards building up in front of you. The process of changing lanes should not take that long. All right, following distance, how to do the 2-second rule. All right, so when you finally get out there in your drive times, you're going to be practicing the 2-second rule. All right, now the 2-second rule, it's done in the following way. You are driving along a relatively straight road. To estimate the minimum and safe following distance, allow the car in front of you, such as this yellow car, to pass a fixed object, which is the road sign right here. The fixed object does not move. The yellow car does. All right, this can be any object that is easy to distinguish from, such as the road markings or a lamp post, although in this case, in the diagram, it is a road sign. As the rear of the car in front roughly lines up with your chosen reference marker, you want to count to 2 seconds. If before you have reached 2 seconds, your vehicle has passed the same reference marker, you will need to increase your following distance and try again. Now, 2 seconds isn't 1, 2. 2 seconds is 1 1,000, 2 1,000, okay? 2 actual seconds. Now, the 2-second rule isn't just for the car in front, however. If a car is driving too close behind you, such as tailgating, that's what tailgating means, following too closely, you will also need to take their thinking distance into account by leaving a sufficient and safe distance between yourself and the car in front of you. So for teens, I encourage to use 4 seconds under ideal conditions, 6 seconds under adverse conditions. Okay, so the more distance you have between you and the car in front of you, the less likely you're going to be involved in an accident. It gives you more time to react. It gives you more time to evaluate data. It gives you an opportunity to possibly use an out, right, to change lanes. So that way you are less likely to get involved in an accident. So major causes on the freeway, major cause of freeway collisions is following too closely. Okay, so we definitely want to, even though I'm an adult and I have plenty of driving experience, I do not use the 2-second rule. I use the 4-second rule. I make sure I have distance between me and the car in front of me because I want to make sure it's safe, right? That's what we call defensive driving. Causes of collisions. Okay, collision is also a term for crashes. Number 1, distracted driving. The number 1 cause of crashes in the state of Texas is distracted driving. And of course, texting is at the top of the list. So if you have a cell phone, I encourage you not to use it while you drive. Turn it off, put it on silent. There's some great apps. I know the iPhone automatically for me goes to off or silent while I'm driving. It recognizes when I'm in my vehicle, so I do not get any notifications from texting or Facebook or anything else. You definitely want to avoid talking, music, and that could be distractive. Other passengers in the car may be distractive as well. The more people you have in your vehicle, the more distracted you're going to be. Eating, reading, things of that nature. Avoid distractions, minimize them, and keep yourself safe when you're out there driving. Number 2, driving while intoxicated and drugs, DUI. Texas legal limit is 0.08. For teens, it's called DUIA, driving under the influence of alcohol by a minor. That means if you have any detectable amount of alcohol inside your system, regardless if it's 0.08 or higher, you'll be charged with DUIA. Now, of course, if it's at 0.08 or higher, you will be charged with a DWI, but as a teen or anyone under the age of 21, you'll be charged with a DUIA. So if you see that on your exam, what is a DUIA? Driving under the influence of alcohol by a minor. Make sure you put by a minor because that's who it applies to. Number 3, speeding. The faster you go, the deadlier the crash. The single most important factor. Okay, when it comes to driving and deadly crashes, speed is the most important factor. All right. Reckless driving, drivers that are speeding well over the limit, changing lanes too quickly, or driving aggressively, even things like road raging. That's what usually causes crashes out there on the roads. And of course, following too closely. I want you to pay attention to the term tailgating. It is going to be a question on your final exam. It's going to be one of those fill in the blanks. So what is another term for following too closely? It would be tailgating. So following too closely, you need a safe distance between you and the car in front of you. The more space you have, the less likely you'll be involved in an accident with that vehicle. Okay, so the most dangerous type of collision you can be in is the head-on collision. That's going to be another question on your exam, so you need to know that. Head-on collisions are by far the most deadliest. If you can't avoid being hit from behind, here's a tip for you. Release your foot from the brake, okay? So that gravitational force that goes through your vehicle will be lessened, and it'll do less damage to not only your vehicle, but also to you as an individual sitting inside the car. So that will also be on your exam. Interchanges and feeder roads. You notice this picture right here is a picture of an interchange. So an interchanges were designed to allow cars to move from one freeway, highway, interstate to another without having to get off or stop. For example, when traveling north on I-45 and you want to get onto I-10 West, you simply use the I-10 I-45 interchange. There are several types of interchanges. The most common is diamond and cloverleaf. So if you see a question on your final exam asking you for two types of interchanges, diamond and cloverleaf are the most common that you'll find out there on the road. Feeder roads, of course, feeder roads are roads that run parallel to the freeway or interstate. Its purpose is to feed traffic on and off the freeway, sometimes referred to as the frontage road. When getting on the freeway, they have things called accelerating lanes that allows cars to enter, and of course exit lanes that allow cars to exit the freeway. And of course you must yield to cars entering and exiting the freeway when you are on the feeder road. While on the freeway, if you're constantly being passed on the right, you should change lanes to the right because slow traffic keep right. So what is the no-show policy at all ages driving school? When you are scheduled for a drive time, it is recommended that you show up at least 5 minutes prior to your scheduled drive time. That way you avoid being late. Canceling drive times, you must give no less than a 24-hour notice when canceling a drive time. If you fail to report or fail to cancel with at least 24-hour notice, you will incur a $35 no-show fee. So that is what we want you to know, is that there is a $35 no-show fee if you do not show up on time or you don't show up at all to your scheduled drive time. And if you say you canceled it, well, then you must have canceled it with at least 24-hour notice. If it's less than 24-hour notice, it's not enough time, and you'll incur that $35 no-show fee. If you owe a balance, such as a no-show fee, you will not be able to schedule a drive time until the fee and balance is clear. If you show up to your drive time without your driver's permit, it will be considered a no-show because it is illegal to drive without a license on your person. So remember, always have your license on you. You're an adult now or getting close to being an adult. That means you must have your ID wherever you go, and that includes your driver's license, which is now your ID. So wolf packs. What is a wolf pack? A wolf pack is a group of vehicles, either 6 to 9, in a close proximity on the roads. All right, vehicles bunching together on the expressway. Avoid to keep a space cushion to reduce risk. Change speeds, avoid packs, become a loner, and drive between packs if possible. Okay, avoid those big groups of cars, motorcycles that run going down the road. The less space you have between cars around you, that means the more dangerous the situation becomes. All right, adverse conditions. All right, so adverse conditions affect vision and traction. We usually don't have much control over adverse conditions, and many are considered acts of God. So rain, it affects traction. Wet roads and vision, use low beam headlights. Snow affects traction. Icy roads and vision, use low beam headlights and tire chains to improve traction. Of course, here in Houston, tire chains are not necessary. We rarely ever have snow, and if it does snow, it is not at the depth in which we'd need to use tire chains. And usually they close down the city if the roads are icy anyways. And if they are icy, they're not icy for long because it doesn't stay too cold very long in Texas. Once that sun comes up, it usually gets above 32 degrees. All right, smoke, usually caused by fire and or pollution, and it affects your vision. Glare, driving with the sun in your eyes, or high beam headlights from another car, that affects vision. Night, when the sun goes down, visibility is reduced, so you must reduce your speed. Water on the road, it affects traction. Avoid hydroplaning. Okay, hydroplaning is basically when your tires no longer have contact with the road and you are water skiing on the top of the road, or on top of the water that is covering the road. So you want to avoid hydroplaning by driving in the tracks of the car in front of you. Check your brakes by pumping them after going through deep water. If water is too deep, turn around, don't drown. If your car is sinking, escape through the window or door. Notice how this stuff right here will be on your exam. So everything from what to do when your car is sinking, from how to avoid hydroplaning. So make sure you have that in your notes so that way you could do well on your exam. Best way to address adverse conditions is to slow down. Use the 6-second rule. Test tip: rough areas built in the roadway to warn drivers of imminent danger are called rumble strips. Okay, if you see a question like that on your test, the answer is rumble strips. When making long road trips, you want to stop every 100 miles or every 2 hours. Stretch your legs, okay? Avoid highway hypnosis. That is the best way to avoid conditions that may cause an accident when traveling long distances. All right, so what happens when you're involved in an accident? All right, so when you're involved in an accident, if anyone is hurt, the first thing you want to do is call 911. If no one is injured and damage is less than $1,000, no crash report is required. If hitting a parked car, attempt to find the owner. If the owner cannot be found, leave a visible note giving contact information and a brief explanation of what happened. All right, and over here, here's a quick little chart for you. What to do after a car accident. 1, move to a safe location. 2, do not leave the scene. Okay, if you leave the scene, that's what they call a hit and run. Stay as calm as possible. All right, do not move seriously injured. Make sure 911 is called if there are injuries. You want to take photos of the accident. Now, in this day and age, all our phones have the ability to take photographs. So go ahead and take a photograph. One thing I do, I've been involved in several hit and runs where a person hits me and then they just take off. Now, what I usually do, if I'm able, if somebody hits me from behind, I'll just quickly pull out my phone, take a quick picture of their license plate before I get out. That way, once I get out and they do take off, I have proof of the owner, the vehicle that hit me and the license plate, so that the police can locate that driver and I can get restitution. All right. Do not allow license or registration to be photographed. Now, what they're talking about is your actual driver's license, all right, and your registration. Okay, that's personal information. You can write down information on a piece of paper, but you cannot take a picture of somebody else's license. All right, you want to seek medical treatment ASAP if there is an injury, and of course, or even provide medical assistance if you're able. And then, of course, always file a police report. Now, of course, if it doesn't meet the $1,000 crash rule here in Texas, a police officer more than likely will not take a report. They will say, go figure it out, work it out between your insurance companies. A crash report is not required if it's less than $1,000. Some things you want to collect is date, time, and conditions, name of involved parties, witnesses and names and contact information, license plates of cars involved, all vehicle damage from all vehicles, any other details such as injuries, so name, vehicle info, insurance company name, policy number, things like that. Have that little checklist off in your car, so that way if you are involved in an accident, pull it out so that way you don't miss anything. That way you can get the insurance company to pay you adequately because you didn't fail to get information at the time of the wreck. Okay? Insurance liability in Texas. All right, Texas have what they call liability insurance law. Now, me personally, I have full coverage that covers more than just simple liability. And of course, you don't have to get the minimum. You can get more, which I always advise people who have money. Always insure yourself for what you're worth. If you're worth $1 million, you should have $1 million auto insurance policy. If you're worth $1 billion, then you can insure yourself at that point. But you definitely want to insure yourself for what you're worth. You don't want to be 40 years old and then get involved in a car accident and lose everything you've worked hard for, your investments, your wealth, okay, because you can lose it. When somebody goes to the hospital or somebody dies and medical bills get very, very expensive, your liability insurance is not going to cover a drop in the bucket for it. So you need to make sure that you insure yourself for what you're worth. Now, if you're not worth $30,000, $60,000, $25,000, then liability insurance is fine because you cannot squeeze blood out of a turnip. If they try to sue you for more, there's nothing for them to take because you don't have it. And that's where simple bankruptcy comes into play. All right, so Texas liability insurance. The Texas Motor Vehicle Safety Responsibility Act was enacted to ensure all drivers are financially responsible for the death, injury, or property damage they may cause while operating a motor vehicle. All owners and or operators of motor vehicles in Texas must have at least the minimum amount of liability insurance. As of January 1st, 2011, the minimum amount of liability insurance is $30,000 against injury or death of one person, $60,000 against injury or death of two or more individuals, $25,000 against property damage. To comply with the Texas Motor Vehicle Safety Responsibility Act, a driver, unless exempt, must maintain liability insurance or be self-insured under the provisions of the Act. Evidence of financial responsibility must be presented at the time a person applies for a driver's license, registers a motor vehicle, or obtains a motor vehicle inspection report. Every owner or operator of a motor vehicle in Texas is required to furnish evidence of financial responsibility to law enforcement officer upon request to another person if involved in a car crash. Now, if you are wondering how much more does it cost, well, first of all, how much does auto insurance usually cost in the state of Texas? Well, I can tell you right now, for an 18-year-old male, just for simple liability, you're looking close to $100 a month, which is $1,200 a year. Now, to get more insurance than basic liability, such as full coverage, you may be looking at almost $200 a month. But of course, you have to understand that a car is the second most expensive item you will buy in the course of your life, number one being your home. So if you're going to go out there and spend, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 on a vehicle, you want to make sure that every part of that vehicle is covered. Now, if you are what they call financing a vehicle, you will be required to have full coverage regardless. So if you can't afford to pay for a $20,000 Toyota Corolla, and you have to borrow it from the bank, well, the bank's going to say you're going to have to get full coverage anyways. So do incorporate that insurance cost into the price of buying a car, because it will make a huge difference. All right. So if you could only afford $500 a month, well, then you got to think about gas, you got to think about insurance, you got to think about upkeep, not just the actual monthly payment of that vehicle. So you got to be smart when you go out there and buy a car. All right, defensive driving. The practice of using driving strategies that minimize risk and help avoid accidents, as by predicting hazards on the road. Now, one of the simpler ways I usually tell students is defensive driving is looking out for myself and others. Anything I can do not only to help myself stay safe, but others stay safe as well. An example would be is if I see somebody trying to merge onto the freeway in front of me, I may give them more space, even signal to them to let them know I'm letting them in, so that way they can safely merge without me trying to enforce my right of way over that vehicle. So you always want to look out for others. You want to stay safe for everybody so we can all get home to our families and enjoy life as long as we can. All right, right turn on red. This is something you may see on a short answer essay. How do you right turn on red? It's real simple. Right turn against a red light. You want to signal, stop for a red traffic light before the stop line or limit line, if there is one, or before entering the intersection. If there is no sign that prohibits a right turn on red light, you may turn right when safe and clear. So what now? Okay, so what happens after I finish phase one? Now, of course, after you finish the final exam, after this review, there is no reason for you not to make 100 on that final exam, because literally every single question, there is a slide on this review that will give you the answer to that question. So I anticipate everybody who's taking that final exam to do splendid and get a great grade on it, because this is a great review for you to have going into that final exam. So what happens after I finish phase one? You start phase two, where you begin your 7 drive times. Now, of course, your drive times are 2 hours long, 1 hour of driving, 1 hour observing. How do I schedule a drive time? We encourage you to call your local all-ages driving school to schedule a drive time that best fits your schedule. Okay, now there may not be a scheduled time available that you would like to have it, and you may have to delay a week or two to get it done. However, we still encourage you to call to find a drive time that you can commit to. What if I don't have my permit yet? Well, you cannot start phase two without a permit. When you get your permit, you will need to bring it to all ages locations so you can make a we can make a copy and begin scheduling your drive times. It is illegal for us to allow you to drive out there on the road without a permit. You need to be officially finished with phase one. That means you have no more classes to make up, and you're able to do phase two, and you have your permit, we have it on file, and you start making those appointments. So how long will phase two take? Each drive time lesson will encourage students to practice each lesson after your drive time. If you lack progress, you may need additional practice that can be provided by the school for a fee or by your parents. You have 6 months from the date of the first class of Phase 1 to finish the entire driving education course. That means Phase 1 and 2. If you fail to finish within the time frame, you may have to apply for an extension, which of course is followed by a fee, or start the program over, where you simply pay full price to start the process over again. So to avoid this situation, by making sure you get your permit ASAP, make up any Phase 1 classes you may have missed, practice your driving skills between lessons, and make sure you call to schedule your drive times. So if you have any questions, please use the following contacts. I'm Mr. James. I work at the Pasadena location. I'm also the distant learning instructor. You can email me with questions at any time at mrjamesdriverz@gmail.com. If you need to talk to the owner, Mr. Asif, he's the owner and operator of All Ages Driving School. You can contact him at his email address, or you can contact any of our driving school locations where the numbers are listed below. But I really enjoyed working with y'all during this course, either it be distant learning or in class. I hope this review helps you out to get a better grade on that final exam. If you have any questions about anything, assignments or final exam or drive times, you just go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll try to answer it the best I can. Y'all have a great time and see you next time.